to the channel. I'm back to break down this 11-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you tuned in yesterday, you hopefully played a lot on Juan Soto because I was very high on him. I made it clear that he was my top play of the slate, and he went out there and hit 2 home runs, so you always love to see that. Was really high on Soto, and he definitely performed, so I hope you guys played a bunch of him and had a good night. And then I had also mentioned a guy in Tyler Glasnow and his matchup with the Yankees B squad, as I like to call it right now, and some strikeout upside. And he went out and he had a no-hitter for a while there, and he definitely racked up some Ks. So I think we had some good calls yesterday. Hopefully you guys got some of those guys in your lineups, specifically a lot of Juan Soto because he killed it. So yeah, we're gonna move on to this slate today. Try to keep the good calls rolling. Before we continue, if you could please like and subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate that. It's going to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, and I'll be here all season long helping you guys to become better MLB DFS players and giving you some good analytics and some good plays. And I have released a Patreon package over there on Patreon. If you haven't gotten it yet, I would recommend it highly. All my Patreons right now are really liking it, and you get access to my color-coded data sheets that I display behind me on the screen during the videos. As well as some things like bullpen data, power rankings, cheat sheets, team hitting data, and so on, and stuff you haven't even seen so far up on the screen. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So as always, I like to go ahead and sort my sheet by K rate when figuring out pitchers we're going to want to play in our lineups. Because we play fantasy sports, we get points for strikeouts. And the top guy on the slate and strikeout rate today is actually that in Josh Lindblom, but we're not going to start with him. We're going to start with Patrick Corbin, just because he's in the high price tier. And Patrick Corbin has a 29% K rate, a 14.6 swinging strike rate, and then when you go over to his splits against righties, he's got a 27.2% strikeout rate, and against the lefties, it's a 36.1. So actually really, really good against lefties, but he's just good across the board. It's Patrick Corbin. And while we do want to target him against as many lefties as possible, he's just good all around. And his price tag reflects it on DraftKings. He comes in at a 10-2 price tag. And he's taken on this Philadelphia Phillies team, which I will mention. These two teams in this game are really low on the list as far as strikeout targets this year. They both don't really strike out a ton. I was taking a look at my team hitting data sheet before the video, and it just really stuck out to me. Neither of these teams are really striking out a ton this year, so a little bit of a disclaimer there. I think a lot of people are going to be paying up for these two pitchers on this slate, and I might immediately give you guys a little bit of a tip as to maybe not doing so, because we're going to get into some other options later on in the video. But they are the two top premier options on the slate as far as numbers. I do have to admit that. And breaking down the numbers, Patrick Corbin leads it off with a 10-2 price tag in the strikeout rates, as we had mentioned, and then Aaron Nola is right below him with a 27.5% K rate, and then he's got a 11.8 swinging strike rate, 27.6% K rate against righties, and then against lefties it's a 27.5% rate. And you can see just like their hard contact, their WOBA, their slugging, and all that stuff, all the way down the list. It's all green and yellow. Even their weaknesses aren't big weaknesses, and that's why these two are the top priced pitchers on the slate. So definitely doesn't hurt to go ahead and get him in there. And then I would mention Aaron Nola is the favorite in this game. He's a 150 favorite, so Vegas likes him to pick up the win. So when deciding on who to play, I would lean Nola based on the Vegas line, but then you're also paying up an extra 200 to get him. So these two are very, very close today as far as who to have the most appeal to, but they're the two options on the slate, and their numbers definitely stand out. And the next guy I'm going to point out is this top guy that we had mentioned in Josh Lindblom, and I'm very, very high on Lindblom today because his strikeout rate since he came over to the majors has been at a 31.6% clip. He's a guy that's been in and out of the majors. He went over and played at the KBO for a while, but looking at these numbers, he definitely has the strikeout stuff. He's got a 40.4% K rate against righties, and then against lefties, he's got a 25.4% K rate, so it drops down against lefties. And you can see he's got some major hard contact and slugging issues against lefties, so, really red on my sheet. So that's a little bit of a disclaimer. So you could have some interest in some Detroit lefties today as a cheap stack as well, but when looking at the Vegas lines today, Lindblom comes in as a 195 favorite. His team has a 5.24 implied run total, and he's taking on the Detroit Tigers, who are not the most threatening lineup. And when you look up and down their lineup, they have a lot of righties in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 righties. So I just definitely think that Lindblom is a good tournament option today because he has so much upside and he's cheap. He's only 6.6K. He gets a great matchup. He's shown that he has strikeout stuff. He's just a high strikeout, high hard contact rate hitter, and he's got a little bit of walk issues. But I think against a Detroit Tigers team who can show some lack of discipline at times, I think this is a great spot to jump on the Lindblom wagon, and I'm definitely promoting him in a high way. It is risky, but I think I'm all in on the play today. I think I can own it if it goes south, and I think I'm going to promote him to you guys and say, get him in your lineups because he's going to give you some salary relief. He's going to allow you to fit in some elite bats, and I think he has a ton of upside in this matchup. So I definitely like Josh Lindblom today. I think I made that clear. And then the next guy that I like is another young prospect that's really looked good so far, and Ian Anderson taking on the Boston Red Sox. He's only pitched 6 innings, but he's got a 27.3% K rate, and his numbers are showing that he's got a 38.5 against lefties and 11% against righties. Once again, we can't really weigh that too heavily because we're dealing with a very small sample size, but he comes in at a 6.8K price tag on DraftKings, and I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think he is someone that you could definitely consider in your lineups for salary relief. And we don't have any Vegas lines to work with right now, so when those lines come out, I'm hoping that he's going to be a heavy favorite, and that will make me feel even more comfortable with the play. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Anyone that's a Patreon of mine, keep an eye on the Discord chat with any of those questions up until lock. Another feature of my Patreon package, go ahead, hop on that and ask me any questions up until lock, because baseball is a sport where things are ever changing up until lock, sometimes with weather and umpire data and so on. So there can definitely be a lot of stuff to analyze later in the day. But I think overall in the morning, looking at Ian Anderson, he could definitely be a good option today. We do have limited data to work on, but I know he's got some talent, and he's in the low price range as well. Another guy with some salary relief that you can throw in your lineups. And then moving further along, I think I do really like Framber Valadez today. He's a 22.3% K rate. He's got a 20.1% strikeout rate against righties, and then a 28% strikeout rate against lefties. And when looking at the Texas lineup that he's taken on today, I will start out by saying that they do have their fair share of righties, but I did some looking into my team hitting data sheet earlier, and I noticed that their strikeout rate against left-handed pitching is very high, so that goes ahead and increases the appeal of this matchup for Valdez. And I think that's a big reason why I like it, because I know his strikeout rate isn't the greatest against righties, but this Rangers team has really struggled in the strikeout category against left-handed pitching. So I went ahead and gave Framber Valadez a boost in my model today as a great option just because of the matchup. And it's not like he's a bad pitcher at all. When you look at his numbers across the board, he's very solid. He's got a little bit of orange going on, so you could call it mediocre, but his ground ball and his fly ball stuff is bright green. Very impressive in the ground ball and fly ball categories. And that's really what increases the appeal for me. I think he's going to be able to keep himself out of trouble. And then when you look at the matchup, I think he's going to get a K boost because these Texas Rangers have struggled against left-handed pitching this year. And lastly, the guy I'm going to have to mention last is that in Masahiro Tanaka taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. He's another guy, it's, how am I trying to say this? He's a guy to have interest in because of, his price range and his abilities. He's once again down in the 7K range, so if we don't want to pay all the way up for an Nola or a Patrick Corbin, Patrick Corbin, I think that you could go down to Masahiro Tanaka. He's got a 22% K rate and a 12.4% swing strike rate. And then against righties, he's got a 23.8% K rate. And against lefties, it's a 20% K rate. Tanaka is a guy that's just solid across the board once again. And it's a price range thing. If you're not wanting to pay up for an Aaron Nola or a Patrick Corbin, you can drop down to Masahiro Tanaka, and I think he's a good alternative. And then you look at the weather. He has 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from center, which always helps our pitching. We like to look at that. And if we have winds blowing in, it's just a little bit of a bump. And then we'll have to keep an eye on the Vegas lines as they come out. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down some bats that we're going to want to target today. When looking at bats that I want to target, I like to look at Sierra, figure out who has some of the worst Sierras on the slate, and go from there. And the first guy that stands out that I know we're going to want to target today is that in Asher Wojciechowski, taking on the New York Mets. And when you look at his numbers across the board, he's really bad against righties. He's got a terrible ground ball and fly ball rate, and then against lefties, he's very bad as well. So he's just someone we're going to want to target today overall, and he's actually a little bit worse against, well, both. I don't even want to justify his numbers. That he's just been both again. I don't want to justify anything. He's bad, and we want to target him both sides of the plate. So we want to target him with the best hitters in the lineup, and we want to target him with the guys with power. So you got Nimmo, Conforto, Pete Alonso, Dominic Smith, Robbie Cano. That 1 through 5 range I really like today. And then the 6 through 9 is where my interest kind of falls off. If you have to throw those guys in for salary relief, I understand, but I really do like this 1 through 5 range. So, Nimmo, Conforto, Alonso, Dominic Smith, and Robbie Cano. I like those guys a lot today. I think that stack's solid, and I think that when Wojciechowski gets out of this ball game, they get to take on the Baltimore Orioles bullpen, and I think that's going to make you like the Mets even more today. So, I think they're consistently affordably priced type of deal, in the low 4K range, and I think they're stacked to have interest in today. So they're the first ones that I'm going to point out today. This New York Mets, you got to like them. Next on the list, we have a long reliever, it's looking like, in Jordan Lyles. He's not going to start this game, but he's a guy we've been targeting all season long, and he's a guy I've enjoyed targeting because he's been bad. And when looking at his numbers, he's just bad against righties, and then against lefties, he's bad as well. Just consistently pretty bad across the board. Definitely a guy that we're going to want to target. And, it's the Houston Astros, so we do have a pretty fair share of salary relief as well as high-priced guys. And the first guy that stands out is Michael Brantley. He's only 3.2K on DraftKings today, which is way too cheap. I don't understand that price tag. If he makes the lineup in the 3 spot, I would highly, highly suggest playing some Michael Brantley today because that is just too cheap. And I'm guessing he's going to get a lot of ownership. But for good reason, because I don't know why DraftKings refuses to price him up, but they seem to just want to keep him at that low price tag. So definitely play a lot of Michael Brantley today and feel comfortable about that, I would say. But then, when looking to stack this team, you want to target the 1 through 6 range. You got Springer, Altuve, Brantley, Gurriel, Tucker, and Correa. And the bottom of the order provides some good salary relief for you if you want to throw in a Diaz or Josh Reddick. If I'm picking a stack that I like today, my preferred range would probably be the 3 through 6 range. Brantley, Gurriel, Tucker, and Correa. I really like that part of the lineup. So go ahead and throw them in your lineups. And then we have a Coors Field game, so we have to go ahead and talk about that. Coors Field's the best hitting environment in baseball. The way the ball carries in Colorado is a thing. Ball just flies out of the ballpark. If they're making contact, it's going to go flying off the bat. And this is why we like Coors Field, not to mention that pitchers that throw breaking balls, it does not break as effectively, and it can hang up and be easy to hit. So, yeah, little suggestion there. You want to target Coors Field. And when looking at the two pitchers that are taking the mound in Coors today, we have first Kevin Gausman on the Giants taking on the Rockies, and he's just below average across the board. Not terrible, but when you're looking at his splits, he does give up a lot of hard contact to right-handed hitters, and then against lefties, it doesn't really get much better. So Gausman, definitely a guy that we can target, and I think this Coors Field game is going to be it's going to be a priority today because I think it's going to have a high implied run total. The line's not out yet, but I think we're going to be looking at a lot of runs in this game. I'm looking at the San Francisco Giants side. A guy in Alex Dickerson in the 2 spot at 3.6 is way too cheap. I don't get that price. Play a lot of Alex Dickerson today. And then you have Longoria and Brandon Belt in the low 4.2 range. And then Sandoval is only 2.7, so I like Sandoval. And, the premier option in this lineup is obviously Mike Yastrzemski at the top of the lineup, but he has a major price tag. But he's the number one option we're going to want to fit in our lineups. And, I would prioritize him very highly today. if at all possible, get Yastrzemski in your lineups. But, we also have some good salary relief options in this lineup. And I do think that you can target every single player in this lineup because it's the course field effect. So, we would prefer to target the 1 through 4 range. But you can just really throw in anyone that works salary-wise and like your lineups today. And the same is going to apply for the other side of this game. Our premier options are Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. Even Raimel Tapia at the top of the order, you have a lot of interest in. Charlie Blackmon in the cleanup spot is obviously a premier option, but these guys are all priced up, like they always are, the Colorado bats. I mean, Blackmon, Arenado, and Story are your top 3 options, but they're all in the high 5K range. So if you can swing that somehow, great. If you can't, which you probably can't, you're going to want to throw in some of these cheaper guys like a Daniel Murphy, Ryan McMahon. They just picked up Kevin Pillar, so he might be in the lineup. And then you got Sam Hilliard and Tony Wolters. So you can toss in those guys at the bottom of the order for some salary relief, and just because they're in the Coors Field game and they're gonna make you feel comfortable because you got bats in one of the best environments in baseball. But we prefer the elite options. It's just a matter of how we're gonna fit those in. I have mentioned some cheaper pitchers to you guys so far, so I think you could go ahead and play some of those guys and try to fit in as many of these Coors Field bats as possible. And I think that makes a lot of sense on today's slate. And then moving further along, this next game in the last game of the night is the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they're another spot that I definitely have interest in today. Taking on Alex Young, and we're looking at Young's numbers. He's been not terrible, but definitely not impressive, and he has to take on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then when you're looking at his numbers against righties, he's pretty good on the ground ball, fly ball, and all that stuff, but then the WOBA, the hard hit rate, and the slugging is not the greatest, and against lefties, he's actually been pretty solid. So it's really the righties that we want to target on this team. And the Dodgers definitely have some righties that we can target. Mainly, Mookie Betts is a big option. Justin Turner crushes left-handed pitching, like Justin Turner a lot today. AJ Pollock, Chris Taylor, Will Smith, and Enrique Hernandez. Pretty much every single righty in this lineup. And then if they can kick Alex Young out of the game and start facing the bullpen, you can throw in those lefties to be contrarian. But I'm going to really promote the right-handed hitting in this lineup. They have a 5.66 implied run total, and I would definitely target the right-handed hitters of these Dodgers. That's my promotion as far as Dodgers go. And then the next spot that we're going to have to mention is, we have a couple more here on the slate, that I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over 2 more spots, and the first one's going to be the Milwaukee Brewers taking on Michael Fulmer and the Detroit Tigers. Fulmer has, below average numbers, really not special at all. Against righties, he gives up a 462 slugging, just not great. And then against lefties, he's actually been better against lefties, so he can be a little reverse splitsy. So something to mention there. We want to target mainly the right. Actually, you know what? We got Michael Pineda highlighted. Let's run this back because Fulmer is reverse splitsy as well. But I want you guys to see clearly here. This is Fulmer above Pineda. So against lefties, he's actually given up worse in the slugging category. He's got a 472 slugging against lefties. So just bad across the board. It's Michael Fulmer. I was going to say something looked wrong there because I know Fulmer struggles against both sides of the plate, and that's a big reason why we're going to have interest in a guy like Christian Yelich, because Christian Yelich can slug, and he is 5'1", but I think he's in a great spot here. And then Keston Hiura, Justin Smoke, Ryan Braun, the middle of this order, I really like. And then I think there's some good salary relief options as well in Ben Gamel and Omar Narvaez at the catcher spot, and then you got Eric Sogard to fill in a third base spot at a cheap salary. So I definitely like the Milwaukee Brewers today. Mainly Christian Yelich and Keston Hiura, and then Justin Smoke and Ryan Braun, the 2 through 5 range. Like that stack today. And then lastly, the team I have to mention is the Cleveland Indians taking on Matt Harvey and the Kansas City Royals. Looking at Harvey's numbers, he has not been very good. Against righties, he struggles, and against lefties, he struggles even more. He's got a 5.11 slugging against lefties. So, yeah. Going to want to target, honestly, I really like these Indians today. So, the guys with power, this lineup is just really good up and down. So I think we can target them all around. And then the Kansas City Royals bullpen is not good. So I think this is a very appealing spot for these Cleveland Indians today, and you're going to want to target, Jose Ramirez, Francisco Lindor, Carlos Santana, and Framber Valadez. That 2 through 5 range is the premier stack, and then you can throw in any hitters in the bottom of the order as well because they're all cheap and you're going to get exposure to this Cleveland Indians team, which I have a feeling when this Vegas line comes out, we're going to have a pretty juicy run total. So I definitely got to like the Cleveland Indians today, and they're my last team that I'm going to mention. So a quick little overview of what we got over on the slate. Nola and Patrick Corbin are our top pitchers on the slate numbers-wise. They definitely stand out, and they're the top plays, but we do have to fit in some bats, and I had mentioned I don't really know if I'm going to want to pay up for that salary today, but they are definitely the top options, and as we're filling out lineups, we're going to have to decide if we can fade them or if we're going to be able to make lineups that we like with our bats and some cheaper pitching. Masahiro Tanaka taking on the Tampa Bay Rays, I think, is one of those salary relief options. I think Ian Anderson at 6.8K on DraftKings taking on the Red Sox could be an interesting option. Just got to keep an eye on those Vegas lines. The New York Mets I like as a stack a lot, taking on Wojciechowski in that Baltimore bullpen. I like the Milwaukee Brewers, and I really like Josh Lindblom as a salary relief play today. I don't know if he's going to get ownership or not. He may be chalky. I really hope not because I'm really high on him. I hope people are scared off him because I'm going to be playing a lot of Lindblom today. Zach Plesac and the Cleveland Indians. I like the Cleveland Indians stack a lot. Mainly the elite guys, Jose Ramirez, Francisco Lindor, Carlos Santana, and Framber Valadez. I like Framber Valadez taking on these Rangers. I had mentioned I looked into some of the stuff on my team hitting data sheet and noticed these Rangers definitely struggle against left-handed pitching in the strikeout category. So I like Framber Valadez. This Colorado Rockies San Francisco Giants game I think is going to have a high run total, and I think it's a game you're going to want to have a lot of exposure to today. And I do think there's some good cheap options on the Giants side, as I had mentioned. And then these Dodgers righties I like a lot. Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, I don't really like as much because he's the lefty in the top. So I had mentioned really just wanted to target the right-handed hitters. So I definitely like these righties on these Los Angeles Dodgers. And so with that being said, I have to go ahead and give you guys my home run call of the day. Nailed it last night with Juan Soto, so we're back over 500. I am 7 for 13 on my home run calls. And as always, I try to mention to you guys, I try to mix in some elite bats and some more sneaky bats. And when looking at the guy that I'm picking to go deep today, I don't think I can. So I just really like these Cleveland Indians, and I really like targeting Matt Harvey in this Kansas City Royals bullpen. And when looking at Harvey's numbers, I always like to kind of give you guys a review and some reasoning as to why I'm targeting. Harvey has a 464 slugging against righties, but then he has a 511 slugging against lefties. And the ground ball and the fly ball stuff is below impressive. We prefer to target the lefties, and I think that the cleanup spot hitter in Carlos Santana in this lineup today is in a great spot. I think Carlos Santana is going to be my home run call of the day. Really like Santana. We got 5-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to right center. I think Matt Harvey splits against left-handed hitters stand out to me. And really the only reason he's not sticking out even more is because the struggles in Josh Lindblom and the lefties. So, he's a guy that I already mentioned to target. So I really think Harvey's a guy to target. I really think that Carlos Santana is a good guy to target, and he's my home run call of the day. So I've been on a roll with those. Get Carlos Santana in your lineup. He's going deep. And that is what I will sign off with. Go ahead and check out my Patreon package. You'll get access to all this color-coded data sheet. I'm adding stuff every day, making it better. I think my current patrons are really happy, and I think they're killing it. So shout out to my current patrons, like for the support. Shout out to anyone watching this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you tuning in today. Get some Carlos Santana in your lineups. Get some Cleveland Indians in your lineups. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.